You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. Welcome to the 8th episode of the miniseries on A Catastrophic Break with Consensus Reality, the record featuring Chris Hanna and friends. On this episode, Chris and I discuss Open Hostility, originally by Razor. We go into his history of being a fan of Razor, why this song was selected, and then we welcome back James Burton and Jahmeel Russell, who played drums and bass on the song, to hear about their experiences with this tune. Thanks so much for listening. And guess what? We're going to have more James Burton and Jahmeel Russell because we're going to talk about Razor now. Open Hostility. Chris, tell me about Razor, and then tell me about why you picked Open Hostility as a tune to adapt for Catastrophic Break.
I picked this song. I think it's just such a great, down to earth, kind of blue collar, celebratory tune about being in a band. And it's a song that's really kind of lost in the Razor discography because it came out on a record that is not considered a classic by the average Canadian metal fan. And I think it's one of their funnest tracks of all time. Yeah, this is an interesting record. I think it came out in 97-ish. Were you following Razor pretty closely in 97? It was sort of the same as what I was doing with Voivod. Like I was very dimly following. Like I wasn't following the bands, but when a record would come out and I became aware that the record was out, I'd go get it. But I wasn't necessarily connecting. And I think with the record Open Hostility and Razor's Decibels, I think both those records, they don't actually have a real drummer on them. If I'm not mistaken. And that really was bothering me at the time. I thought you must take the extra step and have a real drummer, but that wasn't what they were doing at the time. But despite that fact, I still thought, fuck, man, some of these songs are fucking killer. And I thought this track, Open Hostility, well, what if you had a real drummer playing it? And I thought, well, fuck, get James Burton on this and see if I can have some fun with this song.
It's almost like a tribute, right? To an act of respect to the song and to the band to get a real drummer to actually play through this one. Like that, James and I were chatting about that, and it's kind of like, an updated sort of homage to what this the record possibly could have been, but it's a different time and space, and I'm sure the band decided what they decided for very specific reasons back in the 90s. But this is a really cool little tribute to actually put the song to tape with a real drum. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Just a great party tune.
I love it. Do you have any thoughts on what James and Jahmeel were able to come through with you on this one?
Yeah, well, I remember on this one, I think it was this one in particular where James was just like in the studio, was showcasing like these different wild drum fills, and that was really fun. I was just getting amped up every time he'd do one, and like at the end of the song doesn't really resemble the original song at all. He did this crazy fill at the end that he was like, check this out, and did it, and then I was like, oh fuck, that doesn't really, I mean, that's not how the song ends, but I'll change it. And so I adjusted the guitar to fit it, because I thought it was so cool. Like he was just, punch me in at this part and see what you think of this drum fill. He was just doing different ones, and each time it would be totally killer and over the top, and it was just really fun. Yeah. And again, with Jahmeel, I didn't get to be there with him. I can't remember why, which is funny. Like I also saw Jahmeel at the airport very recently, just in the security line.
Nice.
He said hi for a second. I said, "Hey, Jahmeel, I'll see you on the other side at the gate." And then we couldn't find each other at the gate, and we're on different planes. But I guess, Jahmeel and I haven't been able to connect in real life too much. But I love the idea of having Jahmeel on the Razor and Sacrifice tracks, because Jahmeel is like, he's OG in the Winnipeg metal scene. I remember him when he was like literally a little kid playing in, I think it was Matricide, one of the early Winnipeg thrash bands. I seen them play at, I can't remember the name of the venue, but there was like it was them playing and a bunch of fucking skinheads just heckling them. And I was really enjoying the band. So it was cool.
Amazing. Well, we got more from James and Jahmeel talking about Razor here. And Jahmeel, I got to say, listening back to his interview earlier, he is a huge Razor fan. So Jameel's got some really great things to say about this one. So let's hear one last time from James Burton and Jahmeel Russell, the other players on Open Hostility, originally by Razor. Okay, so did you record the Razor song also in the same sessions as the Sacrifice song?
Yeah.
Okay, let's chat about Razor. You also did Open Hostility from Razor's Decibels LP from 1997. As a drummer, I'm very, very curious on your thoughts about the original 1997 version, because Chris notes on his Patreon blog entry about this recording that he's like, yeah, to my ears, it's pretty clearly a drum machine. So I'm curious what your thoughts were when you were hearing this one and thinking about it.
Yeah, when I heard that one, I was like, okay, this is just a drum machine that's going on here. And I might have realized that midway through the song, but the programming of the drum parts were pretty cool, man. And they're, between the snare and the bass drum to kind of to separate the verses and stuff like that. I was like, hell yeah, this is great. And thinking about that song when I was practicing it, that was a cool one, because if I'm going to jimify anything, I'm going to jimify a drum machine. That's
sure.
I can certainly elaborate on this one a little bit. So that was a really fun song to play, because I could open up and branch out from the simplicity of the drum programming. So yeah, that one was really cool. That was a lot of fun. And I think I might have spent, even though I needed to practice a hell of a lot for In Defiance, I think I might have spent the most time on that one, because I wanted to make that song, the drum part, my own, I guess, and didn't want to have some shitty parts in there. So
yeah. And I was wondering, like, were there any things that are impossible to replicate as like a human being versus a programmed drum machine? Like, did you run into any things that like weren't playable that you were like, oh, I'm totally going to switch that because it just doesn't work?
In that song, no. I not that I can remember. No, there wasn't anything too out there, like the drummer needs 4 arms in order to make this part work,
Yeah.
or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it was fairly straightforward to kind of just, try to pretend that I had 4 arms and make something cooler.
Man, that's great. And I was thinking about this because it's the drum machine and you're playing it as, you. I was like, wow, this song actually kind of gets a nice amount of respect by having it played by a real person on an awesome recording. Even though it's like all these years later, like having it performed by you is almost like kind of like one of the nicest things that can ever be done for a song like that. You know what I mean? It kind of brings it to, it's just a form of respect to the song, I think, to have like a person play it, does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel you, man.
It's almost like a tribute.
Absolutely. Totally.
Okay. Yeah. What were there any like snags or anything that you ran into or any interesting stories when you were like doing your takes for this particular one in the studio that stand out in your memory?
Well, there was when we rehearsed it, that was the first song that we ever rehearsed together. There was a couple parts at the ending he wanted to go da 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 da, which isn't the same as what's going on the original track. So he wanted to, throw some propagandy style into it, and I was hell yeah. And then when we got to the studio, there's that section where that almost like a bridge section where there's just space, and there's that rhythmic pattern. Chris wrote that rhythmic part, and that took a couple takes just to kind of feel out the rhythm. And it was a back and forth almost, because I got to play a little bit of a blast beat in between there, and he's got this wicked guitar, just fast picking going on over top of the blast, and then just going back and forth. You're almost trading fours at that point where you're doing solo, but miniature, not flashy or anything, but considering it's a back and forth kind of thing. That was really cool because I'm going back and forth with Chris Hanna.
Yeah. Was he, when you guys had your little rehearsals together, like your pre-recording rehearsals, was it pretty dialed in? Did you guys feel pretty tight live, like when you were playing it together?
I think it was a loosey-goosey type of practice. He brought his Jesus SG.
Yeah.
And that was just so cool. And we stopped at the liquor mart first and got some beer. So we were trying to keep it light. And it was a freezing cold day, and it was just, I picked up Chris Hanna in my car and took him to my jam space, and he's taking out his guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm about to play drums with him, and it's like, I don't even know what to think really, because I'm a super fanboy.
Yeah.
So even the first time we're hanging out, like I'm hanging out with Chris Hanna here, and then we're playing together, and it was just it was pretty surreal, where you just want to play awesome, but you know that there's no pressure really. So Chris made some mistakes, I made some mistakes. We played songs through all the way on the first try and played it again and then fucked up, and it was very whatever, and like a normal band practice really. You're just jamming.
I love it. How do you feel about how the whole project came together? He's got this 9-track record that's available for streaming. How do you feel about the whole the project as a whole, and your role in it? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's you don't when you're doing it, you don't realize, like he asked me to do these songs for Patreon, so I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. It's going to be a select few who get to hear it, and now that it's out, that's exciting stuff, man. So it's almost like a speechless type of thing where you just don't even know what to say. It's just it's history now too. So hopefully he invites us to do another one, and just get to relive the awesomeness and bring more scotch, and yeah, it's just such a cool, it's a cool concept. And I know another drummer, Darren Acorn, he got to play drums with Chris too, and he was a customer of mine at Long McQuaid, so I got to meet him through the store too. So it's just it's really cool that it's a bunch of local dudes getting to play with, the coolest local dude.
Awesome, man. Well, James, I am super pumped that you're willing to do this and hang out. I've been enjoying checking out Endless Chaos as well. So thanks for your hard work in your own bands. But James Burton, thanks for hanging and chatting about these Sacrifice and Razor tunes with me and your times with Chris. It's just awesome to hear your stories and to preserve it for the record and let everybody else hear it too. So thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Greg. We don't need to hear from you back because we don't give a damn.
All right,
that was one of the things,
Yeah. All right, Jahmeel, let's talk about the third track that you played on, which is Razor's Open Hostility from their 1997 album Decibels. And you said you did not record this during the same sessions that you did the Sacrifice ones, right? This one came later.
No, I think I actually did record it during the same session. I hope I'm not remembering this incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure we did all three songs like bang, bang, bang.
Interesting.
And then there was I did go back into the studio and retrack something. There was something that wasn't quite right. It might have been the Razor song, or maybe one section of one of the Sacrifice songs. I'm sorry, I can't remember specifically. But I think all in all, the entire session was like literally two sessions in a studio, indoor studio. So
awesome. Well, I want to know about your fandom of Razor as a band and any thoughts that you may have just like on that band and like a big picture of your musical life.
Okay, so Razor's, I probably heard them around the same time that I heard Sacrifice. And it's sort of strange for me to say this right now, but I wasn't super into them when I first heard them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I just wasn't like, I saw the video. I remember seeing the video for Evil Invaders, and just being like, yeah, but it didn't strike me the same way.
Right.
And then a little bit later on, I guess when Shotgun Justice came out, I kind of dug it, but again, I never actually went out and bought the record. So I never had an attachment to them the same way until maybe 10 years ago or something. I don't know. I got a copy of Violent Restitution, and I was so utterly blown away by that record.
Nice.
I would pretty much say it's like if Canada has an equivalent to Slayer's Rain and Blood,
mm-hmm.
that record is it. It's probably one of the most intense, vicious, violent thrash metal records ever recorded, period.
Nice. Yeah.
And I think Razor never got enough credit back in the day. Not even from me, apparently. I somehow didn't clue into how great of a band they were, when I was a kid. And now, Jesus, man, I'll tell anyone, like, if you haven't heard Violent Restitution and you like thrash or just metal in general, you need to listen to that record. It's phenomenal. Like, it's like all the things I just said about it.
Yeah. Well, and I actually, Propaganda clearly has loved Razor for a long time because they actually made a shirt out of the Razor logo where they made the Propaganda kind of logo, like going off of like an homage to the Razor logo. So that's really cool to see as well. People actually own that shirt. It says vegan invaders on it as well.
Of course it does.
Yeah. And I think that somebody from Razor was actually at the Guelph show back in May of 2022. I was at the show, and I think that Todd mentioned that somebody from Razor was actually at the show. So that was kind of cool as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
How do you feel about the record Decibels from 1997?
So this was a weird one for me because, so I'm already now I'm like, yes, I love Razor. And I own like 3 other records. I got Evil Invaders, Shotgun Justice, and Violent Restitution. I need to get some more of them. But Decibels was a record. I never heard it back in the day. So when Chris said Razor, at first I was like, okay, it's going to be like one of these old songs. And then, it was Open Hostility. So I didn't know the song and I didn't know that record. And when I listened to it, I was like, wow, it's kind of different from the old Razor. I mean, I guess it's all old now because that's kind of older now. But in terms of their catalog, it was like the newest, it's the last record that they put out. So, and it's got this real different vibe. Like, it sounds like the guitars are more tuned down. I know we tuned down on that recording. So I think it's the same tuning as the Razor, the studio version. And then, their version, it's a drum machine. It's like, it's I don't know. It's kind of like a pretty fun song. But yeah, not my favorite for Razor,
Yeah. Well, Chris has some notes about it on his Patreon blog entry where he says everything about the record this track appeared on screamed low budget, from the crappy photoshopped cover to the recording of the drums, which to my ears clearly sound like a drum machine, despite giving Rick credit on the liner notes. So apparently this was kind of something that he picked up on as well, is just kind of like the not the peak of the mountain for Razor.
Yeah, I never got a chance to ask him why he picked that particular song. It's it's interesting, but
Yeah. He goes on to he's got a few more notes here. I'm looking at it right now. He says, but it's the spirit of this record that makes it worth its weight in gold. I just love that they marched on despite market forces and passing fads and kept doing what they loved in their own little zero budget niche. So it kind of feels like maybe they were just kind of like almost an overlooked or forgotten band in 1997. And that even though not as many people seem to be caring about what they were doing on like a commercial level, that they kind of kept going regardless and just kind of made a record that they wanted to make at the time,
For sure. I mean, the funny thing about Razor is it always seemed like they had a chip on their shoulder, They had that song on Shotgun Justice called American Luck, which is basically like any talentless whatever band in the States can get a record deal, but we can't break into the States because we're Canadian.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's like, I don't know if that's true. Maybe you guys just need to like tour the States more or something. The band is clearly great. And maybe if more Americans heard you, they'd be like, oh, wait a minute, Razor is awesome. And now the funny thing is, it seems like that has happened in the States, because, Relapse like reissued a bunch of their records.
Yeah.
And they definitely, now they got a new record coming out after like 20 something years. And so people are more aware of them. I think their popularity has gotten greater, in the last bunch of years. And I think there's like a newfound respect for them.
Yeah.
Which is deserved in my opinion. But I think, unfortunately, maybe they might have achieved what they were complaining about not achieving if they had approached things a little differently. I don't know, because again, not to keep going on about Violent Restitution, but seriously, with an album that powerful and strong, I don't even know how it's possible for them, if they I don't really know how much touring they did in the States, but I can only imagine if they would have been touring with, maybe the right support slot or something, they would have been blowing people away at that time.
Do you, so say Chris came to you and says, hey, I'm going to do a Razor song. Oh, and it's from Violent Restitution. What is the immediate first song that you would hope it would be?
Hypertension.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah, I think, just the opening of the record too, but the first like 3 tracks on that record are just savage. Savage. Yeah. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but anyone listening to this, if you haven't heard that record, go listen to it.
Violent Restitution. There's even a deluxe edition where they have a bunch of live tracks tacked onto the end as well. So if you go find like a digital version, if you're just looking to check it out for the first time, you can find a whole bunch of extra cool bonus stuff at the very end, including Live from Toronto in 1988, which looks really cool because they have a version of Hypertension Live on the bonus edition of Violent Restitution.
Yeah, man, you've done your homework.
I'm looking at it right here. I got it all pulled up right here in front of my screen. It's funny. I got like 5 browser windows going right now at this very second. Okay, so how do you feel about James and Chris's performances on this one? I love the fact that there's like, live drums played by a Winnipeg drummer on this one, because you mentioned that there's the drum machine on the original. So it's kind of like giving this one like a lot of attention and justice that maybe it wasn't able to get back in the 90s.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean the drums on all 3 songs are fantastic.
Yeah,
they really are. And this one in particular too, like with the bass, this one I felt like with what I did on the bass is definitely more like what I would do more often than not, like when I'm part of composing music or whatever, because it's really sticking with the drums and there's no flash to it. It's really just kind of holding it down. A lot of like pedaling on one note while Chris is kind of moving around on the guitar and stuff. And I'm not even positive that that's what the bass is doing on the studio version. I feel like of course I referenced that as much as I could, but I also kind of, like I told Chris I was going to do, if he was cool with it, was kind of put my own thing in there a little bit too,
I love it. Well, how do you feel about the way the whole project turned out, and how does it feel to be a part of this kind of neat collection of tunes that everybody can go and check out now?
I mean, for me, it's a total honor, man, to be asked by Chris to be part of it. And I'm really like thankful to him for asking me, and it's cool. Like I say, like after all these years of kind of knowing each other, to get to work on something with him, just really cool.
Awesome. Well, Jahmeel Russell, I have absolutely loved hearing some recording stories and some metal stories and just, nerding out for a while. So I really appreciate your time to chat about Chris's Patreon project, A Catastrophic Break with Consensus Reality record that's now available for everybody to stream, and your tunes that you performed on from Sacrifice and Razor. I've had a real good time with you today.
Thank you so much, Greg. I really appreciate the chat. It's awesome.